So, I want to tell you about the A-Team. The A-Team is a group of young people aged 16 to 25 who took on the assignment to be my A-Team for the residency. They make suggestions and write a report just like I do. I saw their presentations today, and it was just absolutely spectacular. They've done fabulous work, and I'm just going to pick one thing they recommended out of a number of things that were absolutely fantastic. And one of their suggestions today was that the courts research, redesign, and refresh their website. I love that, refresh. Kind of sounds like a deodorant commercial, you know. Refresh your website to reflect the needs of court users. So they gave us some examples, and all this they put together in 5 weeks' time. So you'd start out, you'd go into the portal of the website, and there'd be all the court locations, and you'd click on whatever court you wanted to know about. And then what would happen is you'd come in the front door and go into the courtroom, and you could click on Talk to the Prosecution, and you would find out what a prosecutor does, what their background is, what you would need to do to be a prosecutor, how you get a hold of a prosecutor. You could talk to a jury. You could talk to the defense counsel to find out what their role is, or if you need a defense attorney. You could talk to the defendant or a witness or a victim, and you could exit back to the lobby. There'd also be FAQs, frequently asked questions. I had so much fun doing that. I'm posting that on my blog tonight so all my American friends can see it. They've been begging me for weeks. Please, please, we want to see you in the robe and the wig. So I did it for them. Anyway, so the judge says, how can I help you? Answers questions such as, what is your job? What's the criteria you have to follow to pass down a sentence? How do you become a judge? And so forth. And then they ask the jury, how can you be a juror? How are you chosen? What's the role of the jury? Why is a jury needed? What kind of cases don't have juries? Different from my country, we have civil cases have juries as well as criminal cases. So you might be called on a case of, say, Microsoft and a patent infringement by somebody else, and it's like just mind-numbing to even think about having to learn and understand all that. I always liked criminal law because it was pretty fast, and, you know, there was kind of a good pace. And I always said, if you wanted to make me unhappy, give me one of those asbestos cases that we're going to have, 50 plaintiffs and God knows how many attorneys and last 2 years, and I just open a vein. I mean, that's not what I'm good at. I'm not good at that. But jurors have to actually sit and listen to all that, which I managed never to have to do. Oopsie. So, what is a thinker's job? And people have asked me that, as you can imagine, my friends. So, you're doing what? And you're going to go think? I said, yeah, it's really cool to be able to have the luxury to actually think about something. I remember talking to a judge in England once, and we were comparing our day and how it went. And I said, well, my day starts with about 100 arraignments. I get through with that within the first hour, and then usually I have a jury waiting, and then, and he was just looking ashen. I said, well, what's your day like? He says, well, I sit from 10 to 12, and then I go to the judge's lunchroom, and we have a couple of gin and tonics. And then we have lunch, and then I like to spend my afternoon standing on the balcony with my pipe thinking. And I'm sitting there as stunned as he was when I described my day, and I said, oh, that's interesting, because in the United States, they don't give us time to think. So it's a luxury to think. When we're no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I think it takes a combination of the willpower to make the change, and then you have to leap over the scary bits. It's hard to change. It's scary to think about doing something different. People are very resistant to change, and you can understand why. It's a difficult thing to do. But in order to make progress, in order to go forth and do a better job in a society that's already doing a great job, and the fact that you are committed to doing a better job, it takes this commitment to change. I was talking with Ilona Kickbush earlier today, whose residency was about health in all policies. And we talked about how that interfaced with justice. Because, for instance, people are healthier when they live in a safe neighborhood. What goes on in a jail in terms of health policy can affect all kinds of things. So if you have a bad policy about HIV, then people getting out of prison are infecting their future partners with HIV. There's all kinds of intersections between justice and health policy. Issues like family violence and, of course, drug abuse and alcohol abuse and child neglect are not only criminal issues, but health issues as well. Laura Lee, whose residency was about integrated design, I was thinking about that, and I was saying that, geez, if we do end up having to build a second prison, which was, shelved when I was here last time because of the global economic crisis, I hope that we can institute policies where we don't have to build that second prison, but we'll see about that. And certainly the rebuilding of McGill Youth Justice Center could do with some design that looked at developmental issues in children and in teenagers and how that might best be served, looked at programming that would be specific to the needs of the developmental ages of those people who end up in custody. Just having light, natural light, instead of dark prison walls could make a huge difference. Having areas where they could go through restorative justice processes. And Laura Lee's residency means that we can call on her and call on the principles that were embraced by the government to apply to new residencies like mine. We're all connected to one another. In the justice system, I always describe it as a huge sausage. You poke here, it squirts over there. So I used to call my police officers my hunters and gatherers. That's where all my folks came from. So if they were out doing a prostitution bust one weekend, come Monday morning, I would have 50 people on my calendar for arraignment. Now, if they didn't tell me to plan on that, it kind of messed up my morning, to tell you the truth. So I trained them to at least give me a clue that this was coming down the pike so I could be more efficient come Monday. So we're all connected. What happens in St. Paul's policy affects corrections and their ability to supervise. When a judge makes remand decisions, it affects corrections as well. When a sentence is going to be carried out in a non-parole period, the justice system in the prison has to figure out where to house that person, for how long, what classification, and so forth. So we're all very interconnected. What we do also affects families and children. When we put somebody in prison, often they have families, particularly the women. Most of them have children. And we never stop to ask, what happens to the children? So we're actually sentencing children to prison as well when their parents are gone. Again, I am not saying that there aren't some people who need to be there. Absolutely there are. But I think we also need to think about, is there a way we can support those families so they won't totally fall apart while their loved ones are away and making their amends to society. The policy of ministers and laws that they enact certainly affect what we do in the justice system. If a policy is, we want 10 years on this kind of crime, and even if the judge doesn't think it's worth 10 years, then right again, you have a tension between the legislative and the judicial branch that doesn't have to be there if we're all talking to one another and cooperating with one another. There has to be information sharing between sectors, and I know everybody gets very tired of hearing about IT issues, but in the justice system, to no one's surprise, there are IT issues as well. When we get a restraining order to protect a person who's being beaten by his or her spouse, what we want to do is notify everybody about the order to make sure it's followed up. So how do we do that? Right now, there is one piece of the system that is actually writing it out and faxing it to another part of the system because the IT sections, the IT systems can't talk to one another. So communication also means good IT.